Hey everybody, it's Matty C. In case you don't know me, I'm a longtime fan, supporter, and occasional volunteer for Stand Up. Pete was kind enough to allow me to take a minute to tell you about my upcoming house concert tour. I'll be playing a series of intimate acoustic shows across the eastern U.S. in the first half of July. These shows are happening in backyards, historic buildings, recording studios, and even the former site of a World's Fair. I'll be playing songs from throughout my long career in the stick-arounds, Harbor Coat, and the Pantones. It has been a lifelong dream of mine to go on a tour like this and earn a part of my income from my music. This is an exciting but terrifying leap, and I would love it so much if you would join me out there and support me at one of these stops. You can find more information and all of the dates at phono4records.com/house shows. Pete, thank you so much for letting me share. I really appreciate it. Cheers, y'all. Matty C.
Stand up. From a defabricated solar-powered garden shed in Rockland County, New York, USA, this is Stand Up with Pete Dominic. On today's episode, tips on lowering anxiety of deep ocean waters after you just finished up watching Sharktopus. And now, the podcast host who has no fear of deep ocean waters because he is not an impulsive billionaire tycoon, Pete Dominic.
Not an impulsive billionaire tycoon yet, sir. Not yet. I am working towards that goal. I've written it in my journal. Someday I hope to be an impulsive billionaire tycoon. Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Stand Up. Thank you very much to Pete Co. Go see Matty C. Go check out his Substack at whatamimaking.substack.com. And welcome to today's program where I have my new favorite congressperson, Jasmine Crockett of the 30th District of Texas. Fightin' 30th. Remember when Colbert used to do that segment? Oh, I loved it. We had an awesome conversation. First time she's been on the show, and it went really well, and I'm very happy to share that with you today. But first, we have a lot of news to get to. I think the big story last night, breaking, CNN got the story. They got the audio of Donald Trump showing classified files to what sounds like several people. And normally, I hate to play the guy's voice, but I will play it if he is incriminating himself in a major crime. And that's exactly what happened with this entire case, the classified documents case. So here's Anderson Cooper throwing to the audio, and then we'll get to the rest of the news and my conversation with Jasmine Crockett, which starts at 16 minutes. If you want to skip ahead because you don't care about this very hard effort that I think is entertaining I put into the news segment here. Otherwise, take it away, Anderson.
Begin tonight with breaking news. We have obtained what is expected to be a central piece of the government's case against Donald Trump. The actual audio recording of the former president talking as if he's showing a highly classified document on U.S. war plans against Iran with people not cleared to even know it exists, let alone what's in it. In a moment, only on CNN, you will hear what jurors will hear one day. The recording was made 2 summers ago, July 2021, at the former president's club in Bedminster, New Jersey. You will clearly hear the former president as he is speaking to several people. According to the special counsel's indictment, they include a writer working on Mark Meadows' memoir, the publisher, and 2 of Trump's staff members. The president was aware he was being recorded. This is the first time it is being played publicly.
These are bad, sick people.
That was your coup, against you.
It started right at the beginning.
Like when Millie's talking about, you were going to try to do a coup. No, they were trying to do that before you even were sworn in. That's right. Trying to overthrow your election.
Well, with Millie, let me see that. I'll show you an example. He said that I wanted to attack Iran. Isn't it amazing? I have a big pile of papers. This thing just came up. Look. This was him. They presented me this. This is off the record, but they presented me this. This was him. This was the Defense Department and him. Wow. We looked at some. This was him. This wasn't done by me. This was him. All sorts of stuff. It's pages long. Look. Wait a minute. Let's see here.
Yeah.
I just found, isn't that amazing? This totally wins my case, Except it is like highly confidential, secret. There's secret information. But look at this. You attack, and
Hillary would print that out all the time, you know.
she'd send it to Anthony Weiner, the pervert.
Oh, he's a pervert.
By the way, isn't that incredible? Though?
Yeah.
I was just saying, because we were talking about it, and he said he wanted to attack Iran and what? These are the papers. This was done by the military, given to me. I think we can probably, right?
I don't know. We'll have to see. Yeah, we'll have to try to
declassify.
Figure out
See, as president, I could have declassified it. Now I can't, but this is classified.
Now we have a problem.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
It's so cool. I mean, it's so. We heard I have.
Yeah, you're going
to jail. You probably almost didn't believe me, but now you believe me.
No, I believe
it's incredible, right?
No,
hey, bring some Cokes in, please.
Wait, what? Did you hear how it ends? Bring some Cokes in, please. Who the hell was that person? Who is the person that handed him the documents? None of these people had clearance to see these documents, and Trump admits they're classified. Wow, the reaction's coming hard and fast last night. The Lincoln Project tweeted, "This is damning evidence. Donald Trump is a traitor to our country, clear as day." Tom Nichols tweeted, "Look at this classified thing right here that is totally classified that I'm showing you right here." George Conway tweets, "If the defendant doesn't go to prison for at least 5 to 10 years, it would be a travesty. The prosecutors have him dead to rights in more ways than we can count." Katie Fang, also legal expert at MSNBC, "This is so bad for Trump." And one more tweet, Nikki McCann Ramirez says, "Need a nice cold Coke to wash down my spilling of state secrets." All right, well, for their part, Republicans are continuing to go after the current president, making up all kinds of conspiracies and allegations against him, including that Hunter Biden sent a text message saying that he had his dad right next to him while he was forcing someone to pay for him. Maybe he did, but had no evidence that Joe Biden was sitting right next to him. A lot of evidence that Hunter Biden would say that kind of thing. But yesterday he was asked by Fox News' Jackie Heinrich, "Did you ever lie about speaking with Hunter about his business deal?" And the president said no. He just said no. You can barely hear it. I won't play it for you, but you can go out there and find it. There's music playing. He was leaving a room, and he was asked by a Fox News reporter that question. And now here is, I think it's the same Fox News reporter screaming a similar question at Nancy Pelosi. And she's just getting on the elevator, walking down the hall, gets on the elevator, and has this exchange with the Fox News reporter. And I loved it.
If the president says he never talked about business,
in a big hurry, I have work to do to save women from a very destructive Republican Party in this House. You should be worried about that.
Does any of this bother you, Speaker Pelosi?
What bothers me are the Republicans standing in the way of your reproductive freedom.
Yeah, Nancy Pelosi talking to the female Fox News reporter and making it about her. Well, there you go. All right, now I want to play just a quick clip on Russia. This is Bill Browder. He's going to be joining me on the show. Well, I'm interviewing him in the morning on Wednesday morning, and so I'll try to get that out pretty quickly. Maybe it probably will be a "Can you talk real quick?" Bill Browder segment tomorrow, but I have not made that programming decision yet. And there's a huge board of people that have to make that decision, and it starts and ends with me. But anyway, here is Bill Browder on CNBC yesterday. He'll join me tomorrow or today. Depends when you're listening to this.
I would argue that this is the single worst thing that's happened to him in the 23 years since he took power. His whole spin, his whole modus operandi is to be to appear to be the toughest, most brutal, and most effective dictator out there. And by being that, by having that perception, people fall into line, people don't challenge him, and he's able to hold on to power. It's like being in the prison yard. He's got to be the most vicious, toughest prisoner with a shank. And what happened this last weekend is you have a new guy show up who's even more vicious, and everybody was sort of falling into line with his, as he rode his convoy into Rostov and Voronezh and other places. And the reason why this is so bad for Putin is that if his image of being a strongman has been shattered, then other people will have a go at him. And Russia's a big place. There's a lot of money involved, and there's a lot of people that would like to have power and get that money. And now that's sort of the door is wide open, and it will only close if Putin can somehow recreate that image, to reassert his authority and to become even more brutal. And so I would say that there is a purge coming of monumental proportions in order for Putin to try to show his teeth to the Russian people.
Just a little preview of what we'll get more of on this show tomorrow from the great Bill Browder, who, if you're not familiar with him, definitely look him up, get his book, and I'll be talking to him and sharing it with you later on today, I believe. All right, so just one more clip. This is Mike McFaul, the former ambassador to Russia, U.S. ambassador to Russia, responding to another speech from President Vladimir Putin on Monday, yesterday, where he assailed those responsible for the armed revolt that plunged his regime into crisis as traitors who played it into the hands of those who wanted to see the country, quote, drowned in a bloody domestic strife. Addressing the nation for the first time since the short-lived rebellion ended over the weekend, Putin appeared defiant, but offered little clarity about his planned response. And here is Mike McFaul on MSNBC yesterday.
Oh, I think it's very clear what he's trying to do. Everybody thought it was going to be something dramatic because Peskov said it was. He is trying to divide the Wagner mercenaries, the soldiers, from their leadership. He's actually trying to do exactly what Prigozhin was trying to do with the Russian conventional forces, saying you've been lied to by them. They dragged you into this war. Gerasimov and Shoigu need to be pushed aside. Putin is saying exactly the same thing about the Wagner fighting forces. And that's my interpretation of why he did the speech. What I think is behind it is that they must have signaled that they're not lying down their forces, just as you were just reporting, right? Prigozhin said only a couple percent did that. And so I think Putin is afraid of them. And he's trying to put some division, saying that they were deceived to try to do this mutiny. Join us and let's throw your commanders under the bus.
So just an unbelievable and crazy and unpredictable story continuing to unfold there. I'll be following it really closely with the best experts we can find here on Stand Up. And as far as other news, before we get to my guest, the great Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, yesterday President Biden said that high-speed internet is no longer a luxury, but an absolute necessity. And he pledged that every household in the nation would have access by 2030 using cables made in the U.S. He announced a more than $40 billion investment would be distributed across the country to deliver high-speed internet in places where there's no service or service is too slow. And that means a lot of rural places, which is why I thought this was an interesting tweet from Mark Joseph Stern at Slate Magazine. He writes, it's so interesting to see Democrats enact all these policies that disproportionately benefit deep red rural communities. A striking contrast to Republicans' unceasing attacks on cities and urban residents. And I mean, Democrats and we all should be caring about everybody, not just the real Americans, as so many Republicans refer to themselves and their supporters. All right, well, what else did I want to tell you? Oh, in Arizona, Governor Katie Hobbs on Friday stripped local prosecutors of the power of criminally charge abortion providers, a move aimed at protecting abortion rights in a narrowly divided political battleground state there in Arizona. The lab leak theory still hasn't been confirmed. Intelligence agencies do not believe the case of 3 workers from a laboratory in Wuhan, China, who became ill in 2019 can help shed light on whether the COVID-19 pandemic originated from an accidental lab, according to a report made public on Friday. A Republican senator named Markwayne Mullin of Oklahoma challenged the president of the Teamsters, Sean O'Brien, to a physical fight, an MMA fight. Apparently, I don't think it's going to happen, though, but I thought that was pretty hilarious and also a sad look at where we are in American political culture. That's a U.S. senator there trying to fight or challenge the Teamsters president to a fight. To be fair, the Teamsters president started it with this asshole. They both seem like assholes, if I'm being honest. He's like, you know where I live, anytime, any place. I mean, these two guys, they're so tough, macho, they would fight each other. He's a senator and a Teamster president. Apparently, though, sadly, the fight between Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk has been called off by Elon Musk's mom. Seriously, look it up. All right, that's all I got for you. I've got to go watch these young people making their videos, drinking the Grimace shake and then pretending to die. It's Grimace from McDonald's birthday. And so on TikTok, there's this hilarious trend where young folks are making videos like the shake somehow killed them, or maybe Grimace himself killed them. It's I think it's pretty funny and harmless. I know at least a couple of listeners are out there enjoying this as well. But the Grimace shake trend on TikTok, check it out, because that's pretty much what I'm obsessed with. But right now, I am so happy to bring you my conversation with Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett of Texas's 30th District. You have seen her in her viral videos where she's going up against the likes of Lauren Boebert and others at the Oversight Committee in the House. You may have heard of her when she and a whole bunch of other Democrats fled the state to stop the vote from happening that was going to destroy even more voting rights, whatever they had left in Texas. So she was a Texas state House legislature. And then last year, she was elected to the U.S. Congress, replacing the retiring chairwoman Eddie Bernice Johnson, who was a legend down there in Texas and was up there in Washington for like 30 years, I think. As a freshman leadership representative, Jasmine Crockett, one of the few black women ever elected to Democratic House leadership in Congress, Congresswoman Crockett hopes to continue to build on the legacy of Chairwoman Johnson and will fight to expand access to health care, voting rights, economic opportunity, and dignity for all. She is a former lawyer who's licensed to practice in Texas, Arkansas, and the federal courts. She's held all kinds of leadership positions throughout her career, and you can check her out at crockett.house.gov. That's her official website. And follow her on Twitter at RepJasmine and at Jasmine4US. Ladies and gentlemen, for the first time ever, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett.
Oh, my gosh. I'm so excited and a little bit nervous to be interviewing a woman whose career I followed all the way back when she was in Texas fighting for voting rights. And now she's in the U.S. Congress. Welcome to Stand Up, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much, Pete.
So, man, how did you get there? You just got there, but you're not new to legislating and you're not new to the law. Tell me a little bit about how you found yourself leaving Texas State House. You haven't left Texas. Obviously, you're representing the 30th District and ending up in the U.S. Congress.
You know, that's a very good question. I'm still scratching my head trying to figure it out. You know, honestly, it's one of those things. My dad's a preacher. And, you know, there's always a talk about there being a calling on your life when you go into especially a Black church, right? Like there's always a talk about the pastor and when he got the calling, right? And I actually believe that there is a purpose and a calling on all of our lives. And usually it's something that we're running away from. And that's kind of how I feel about politics. Not the biggest fan of it whatsoever. But I absolutely believe that I've been prepared for this moment, for the moment that we see unfolding in our country, one that has one side of our country completely terrified and recognizing that we have some real enemies that we need to deal with, both those that are here domestically, as well as those that are foreign, as well as those that understand that our future is really on the line, whether we're talking about democracy, whether we're talking about climate change, whether we're talking about the economic stability of the United States. I think that there are those that understand that the stakes are pretty high right now. And I think that I fall into that category where this is just the moment that I've been called for.
Well, how did you get there? I mean, you're a little Black girl with a preacher's daughter in Texas. It's not, you probably didn't see too many people that look like you in government, much less in leadership roles. So how do you end up there? What's your relationship like with your parents?
No, I mean, honestly, so I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, and definitely Missouri.
I knew that. Damn, I got
Missouri is not known for having lots of kind of Black women leaders. They just got their first Black Congresswoman in Cori Bush. And Cori Bush came in just one term before me. So I didn't grow up seeing the likes of a Cori Bush. And my parents, while they were always civically engaged, they always went to vote. They really weren't the political types. It honestly came with my experience in the law. So after, practicing law for a while, I kind of got frustrated in the disparities that I would see in the courtroom. And I thought, how did we even get this stupid law? Like, this doesn't make sense. Like in real life, like, the people that wrote these laws obviously don't know what they're doing. And I also I practiced in East Texas as well as Arkansas, typically small town Arkansas, as well as big cities in Dallas and over in Fort Worth. And it was almost like it was completely different laws from Texarkana, Texas to Dallas to Collin County to Tarrant County. I was like, what is going on? And so it really made me dig in and say, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a smarter way. And by the time I finally said, all right, I've made up my mind, I'm going to the legislature, I've got to figure out how I'm going to get down to Austin. That was about the time that I also felt as if we were in the midst of a modern day civil rights movement. This is after Trump has been elected. This is after we've seen the likes of Charlottesville. This is after we've, had to deal with Ahmaud Arbery. And honestly, when I was running, we had to deal with Breonna Taylor as well. But as I was running for the state house is when we lost George Floyd as well. And these are the big national cases that everyone knows about. But I already had my own individual experiences as a civil rights lawyer as well, where I'm trying to understand why it is, number one, that someone's child is gone at the hands of law enforcement. Number two, why it is that it's a debate as to whether or not that criminal activity will be prosecuted. And number three, why there seemingly is no recourse when it comes to civil remedies.
Right.
And all of these things combined just made me say, all right, we've got to figure this out. And an opportunity arose when my predecessor from the state house decided that he was going to run and become the mayor for the city of Dallas. And that presented an opening.
And you walked in and you got elected into that seat in the Texas legislature. And then you really became, usually state legislators don't get national profiles, but what happened in Texas with voting rights was a fascinating moment, and it really put you on the map. First time I heard of you was as a result of that. Tell us a little bit about that moment and what led to it once you were elected.
Yeah, I went into the Texas House as green could be. I thought, oh man, we lost George Floyd, and so now the entire world sees that we've got to do something about policing. Yeah. We're dealing with COVID-19. When the only time we ever talked about Corona before was when we were talking about a beer. So I was like, we're actually going to make sure that more people have access to healthcare. Like, I thought that this was our season. And not to mention just kind of the economic issues that we were struggling through while dealing with COVID-19. And so I was like, if it's one thing that they understand in Texas, it's their pocketbooks, right? So I just thought that we had all these opportunities. And honestly, we did have opportunities, but these were opportunities that the Republicans were not willing to seize upon. Instead, they just wanted to continue down this rabbit hole of nonsense. They wanted to go after women and their reproductive access. They wanted to go after trans children, because that's usually what you heard on the doors, is that people were concerned about trans children in schools, right? They also wanted to make sure a bill that actually did not pass last session, that they tried 2 different times to get passed. It just passed this session. But they also wanted to make sure that things like water breaks in the state of Texas, that cities would not be allowed to order that water breaks be required in the state of Texas in the sweltering heat, right? This is also a session in which we saw the collapse of our electric grid. And I thought, man, we will finally get smart about how we're going to go about energy in the state of Texas, as far as like taking care of our own energy. And we didn't do that. Instead, we did everything that was wrong. And by the time we got to voting rights, I was like, I'm sorry, y'all have done everything that you could imagine, right? And we knew that redistricting was going to come up, and they were going to definitely violate the law on that as well. But I was like, what are we doing when we start to go after the very fundamental thing that put us in office in the first place? Like, it is what this country is based upon. Like, we are a modern day democracy, and we are supposed to be the democracy that the rest of the world looks at. And it's supposed to be an instructive democracy, right? And instead, we're constantly tearing it apart, and this is after we saw what happened on January 6th. And I thought, surely we're not doing this. And as a Black woman, as only the 22nd Black woman ever elected to the Texas House, I thought, this has to be the final straw. We can't stand for this. I wouldn't even be here if people weren't willing to die for a person like me, a person they never knew would exist, to have a chance. And so I was definitely pushing on my caucus, along with some other people, and saying enough is enough. And we had no idea where it would go. We had no idea how successful it would be, because you're talking about, getting Democrats to stick together, which, child, listen, that can be a fight. But, we were able to raise the issue. There were those that felt like it wasn't even worthwhile to raise the issue. But I knew at a very minimum, we needed to justify our existence in the House, and representation looked like pushing back and raising this issue on a national stage. And that's where a lot of people ended up first hearing of me, was when we broke quorum in the Texas House.
Yeah, broke quorum and tried to prevent them from further endangering voting rights in Texas, but still lost, right? Yeah.
Ultimately, we got rid of some of the worst parts of it, some of it, by just kind of shining a light on what they were doing.
Right.
Versus allowing this to kind of be one of those things that passed, in darkness and no one knew. So, we were able to soften it just a little bit, not enough, number one. And number two, we were able to really heighten the awareness. I think that was the biggest win that we had, was the heightened awareness that then, got other states to kind of brace themselves and try to come up with ways to push back, because it wasn't just happening in Texas. This is something that was spreading like a cancer throughout our country.
You said that you were green. You don't strike us that way now when you're speaking in public, whether it be at the Oversight Committee, reprimanding Republicans like Lauren Boebert, or, giving interviews or talking to me now. And I'm wondering, and I think I heard you say in an interview that before college, you hadn't really experienced direct racism, but during college, you did. Were you naive about the way things were in Texas, in America, when it comes to, I don't know, race, voting, government politics? And because it doesn't seem like you are now. It seems like you got educated really quickly, and now you're teaching us.
Yeah, growing up, I can say that I didn't really experience a ton of racism. Missouri, it was pretty much black or white. That's just kind of what it was. Right. And in the schools that I attended, I was always one of the very few Black students. And so I was just kind of used to whatever their culture was, right? But I never experienced anything directly until I got to college. So the fact that I was going off to college again, where I was going to be in a significant minority, it didn't really make me pause, because that had been my existence probably since about junior high. And so I was friends with everybody. And even now, I consider myself to have the ability to get along with anybody. Right. But the one thing that I just can't stand for is, people treating people differently based upon how they were born. Right. Period. And it doesn't matter whether we're talking about nationality, whether we're talking about
immutable characteristics.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so for me, I've never had a problem with anybody simply because of how they were born. I don't think that anybody should have a problem with me or anybody else. And so when I went through that experience in college, it really did break something in me. I think that was when a little bit of my innocence kind of started to dissipate. It wasn't that I wasn't aware of racism. It's just that it wasn't a part of my everyday existence. And so, when I went through that, when they decided to key the N-word on vehicles that belong to Black students on campus, or they put these hate letters in our on-campus mailboxes with all kinds of just racial nonsense, that was really when I started to look at the world differently. And I wondered if my friends were really my friends. It was a really difficult time for me. And they brought in an attorney from the Cochran firm to help out, the school did, to try to help out with the investigation, figure out what was going on. And they never got to the bottom of it. But the fact that I had this Black female lawyer to talk to, and she heard me, it really made me say, man, like she was so impactful to me. Because I was like, what do people do when they go through this? Like, who do they talk to? Like, who do they, and it definitely did start to kind of change the trajectory of my career. Because before that, I was not looking to go to law school for sure. So there were a couple of things, including this incident, that kind of led me down a different path.
So somebody keys the N-word in a car and eventually you become a U.S. Congresswoman.
Yeah. Imagine that, right?
Well, you talk about racist experiences. I feel like in America, we don't have the right conversation about racism or sexism because we all know what it means to be treated a different way, to be called a name, even subtly, even if it doesn't seem so overt. But when I, for example, talk to women or black folks, we don't want to be talked to or treated a certain way. But if you must be filled with hate, so be it. As long as you give us our rights. To me, that's the kind of racism that we really need to be more concerned with. We're not going to necessarily change your individual behavior. You might have to have an experience for that to happen, a coming to Jesus moment, if you will. But this takes us to voting rights. I mean, to me, it's like, call me whatever you want. Don't take away my rights. Call me whatever I want. Don't reduce my opportunity. To me, it's the systemic or institutional racism, specifically when it comes to voting rights, that matters more than anything to women and black folks. You can pick up from where I leave there in terms of your reaction to that and what you're doing about voting rights to restore the signature achievement of the civil rights movement of Dr. King and John Lewis and others.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. I mean, it is so profoundly hurtful as a black woman in this country who can sit in a class that has a historic number of black women sworn into this Congress. My class has a total of 6 black women. We've never had this many black women sworn into one class, and see that progress and feel that progress and look over at the Senate and see a vice president that looks like me. And at the same time, recognize that I'm living in a country where I am literally going back to a time that existed before I ever made it to this earth and fighting for very basic things such as the Voting Rights Act that you speak of, right? Like the Voting Rights Act that became a signature part of Lyndon B. Johnson's legacy, that became a signature part of MLK and his fight and John Lewis. And it's like you see so much progress. And at the same time, if you really want to look at where we are in this country, you then say, well, the Supreme Court decided that they wanted to basically dismantle so many portions of the Voting Rights Act. You see that the Congress that historically passed the voting right or reauthorized the Voting Rights Act in a bipartisan way almost all the time with 100% support in both chambers. And even under, we were reauthorized under Bush, right? Another Texan, a Republican Texan, right? Like these things happened. And all of a sudden, what is so scary? I think what is scary is the progress, right? There are those that see the progress and they look at it as a threat when in my view, all it means is that we finally have representation that actually looks like who we are in this country, because that's what representation should be. It shouldn't be that the only people that should ever walk the halls of Congress are old white men. Because guess what? That is not who we are in this country. This country has more than old white men in it. This country has women. This country has Asians. This country has Muslims. It has Christians. It has Jewish folk. It has Black, brown. It has everybody, because we are a country of immigrants. And the idea that there are those saying, well, wait a minute, this has gone too far. There is no threat to the election integrity. The threat is that you have too many people actually having access. And honestly, if we really believe in equal treatment under the law, then this is what it looks like. This is the only time that we really have historically said we are all equal, whether you're poor, whether you're rich, whether you're black, white, or brown, yellow, whatever. When it comes to the ballot box, your vote, even if you're an unhoused person, it counts just the same as the CEO of Amazon. It counts just the same. Each person gets one vote. The problem is that there are those that don't want certain people to vote. They only want the CEOs and the 1%ers to participate. And that's unfortunate.
How have you dealt with people who don't appreciate everything that you just said, whether it be in the Texas State House or now in the U.S. Congress? Have you tried to convince those across the aisle about systemic institutional racism, about voting rights? I mean, you've only been there since January, and we almost didn't think you would be there given the speaker, the fight there. I mean, that was just must have been crazy. But like, what is your relationship with Republicans, and what are your conversations, if there are any, about something like voting rights, much less all the other issues that you advocate on and are legislating on?
No, they don't really want to have actual conversations about these things. I mean, we've tried. It's just not anything that they're interested in doing for a couple of reasons. Number one, so many of them are so beholden to Trump. And that's on all levels. So obviously federal level, but he is played on the state level in a lot of these races. And so there are people that just don't want to go against him because they don't want the backlash in their primaries. You know, this is a power grab for them. They won't engage in real conversation, because the facts are on our side, right? The facts are no one claimed widespread voter fraud until they decided that they didn't like the outcomes of elections. That's all it is, right? If I don't like how this turns out, I'm just going to say that they were cheating. Yep. When we know that historically, when we look at things such as the gerrymandering that goes on, right? They have been cheating. And that's a more complicated kind of subject that people don't really understand as well. Like, they don't really understand how they cut up and carve these districts.
Well, I like to explain it. They're able to draw a district that's not a square or rectangle. It's just around all the people of a certain socioeconomic strata or color. Let's draw this all the way around all the Hispanic people and put them in one district, all the white people that are middle class, all the black people. I mean, your district, my understanding, is very black.
Oh, yeah, it is. My district is very black, but it's actually the most compact district in the state of Texas.
What does that mean, compact? Densely populated?
When we're looking at gerrymandering, one of the things that we look at is this something that fits pretty neatly and tightly, or is this something sprawling throughout the state of Texas? Right. So we have a district that starts all the way basically in Mexico, and then it goes all the way up in this random sliver and goes up for hundreds and hundreds of miles. Or Greg Casar, he represents a portion of San Antonio as well as a portion of Austin. But then they've got maybe another 4 reps in Austin as well, because they've just kind of, cut it into these little pieces.
Yeah, you're explaining it well, yeah.
Or whatever. But, I actually have a compact district, and the natural migration pattern of it supports the fact that it is what we would consider to be a minority opportunity district, right? But what they like to do is they like to use a district like mine. So for instance, I was overpopulated by approximately 30,000 people. So what that meant is that we just had to kick some people out of my district because there were too many once we went through the census. But instead, I was wholly contained in Dallas County, which made sense, right? If you can wholly contain something in one county, you probably should, because the people in one county most likely share a lot of the same issues. You're dealing with, one county commissioner's court and, maybe a certain number of city councils and whatnot. Instead, they took me over into Tarrant County, which for those of you that love the Cowboys, that's where they play. They don't play in Dallas. But they took me over into Tarrant County because there's an area that is fast with its minority growth, right? Mm-hmm. And this area was causing the district that Jake Elsie represents, it caused it to be most likely a toss-up if it was going to remain this way. So what they did is they cut this minority area into 3. They gave 1/3 to Jake. They gave 1/3, I think, to Burgess. And then they gave me the other third. diluting the voices in that voting block. So they literally cut up like one of my cities that way.
Wow.
As well as the city of Arlington has been really cut up as well. And it's like the people in one city, I mean, especially a smaller city, they probably have a lot of the same issues. So why would you have them going to 3 or 4 or 5 different members of Congress trying to solve something?
We know why. You have been a superstar, especially on the Oversight Committee, partly because, and you make it look easy, you're up against the likes of Lauren Boebert. You went absolutely viral when you dressed her down the other day. Do you have any words with her off the record that we don't see? Is there any relationship there?
No, we don't talk. Most people don't understand that when people say working across the aisle, that is a phrase that came from how we're set up in Congress. I didn't know that until I got there. And when you're in committee, Democrats sit on the left, Republicans sit on the right. When you are on the floor to vote, Democrats sit on the left, Republicans sit on the right. And so it's a lot different from the state house where, I had Republicans all around me, like we were all mixed in. And so even in committee, we're not sitting next to each other. We're not really communicating. And so, no, we don't talk very often. We don't see each other. And this is all a seniority thing as well. So the way that we go in committee is you'll start off with like the Republicans because they're in control, and it goes down in a seniority way. So the reason that I'm always around Boebert or Marjorie Taylor Greene, Anna Paulina, the likes of them is because they have more Republicans. So by the time we get to those that have been here for about 2 terms, that's about when we're at the first termers on the Democratic side. And then and some of the freshmen get mixed in right around there. So it's a timing thing. Honestly, we usually don't sit through committees. We're usually in meetings and doing all kinds of stuff. But what's happened is, unfortunately, I get some of the biggest and worst personalities on that side that go like right before me or right after. And I'm actually in committee at that time where I can hear how ridiculous they are.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you do. I'm glad you do. I mean, I think your class and the class maybe before you of young, diverse congresspeople isn't messing around in terms of the way that they're. What I love about you is when you go in to a committee hearing and you have a plan, clearly you're prepared, but you're able to what we call in the entertainment business, improv. You're able to react to something that just happened forever, especially Democrats. They would just go up there and they would read their talking points. Again, happy you're prepared. But if something just happened, if something just got said, you're able to take a moment and address it in a really astute, I think, cutting, effective way. And I think that's super important. But I'm just hearing today news that they're thinking about kicking Marjorie Taylor Greene out of the Freedom Caucus. What do you say to the fact that now Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene are fighting? There's a lot of infighting within the Republican caucus that you don't see as much in the Democratic caucus. And from what we can see, if it's done, it's done behind closed doors.
Yeah, I think that all families should keep their fights behind closed doors. But listen, I'm happy to see it because for the longest, Democrats always blame like, oh, well, y'all should be bipartisan. And it's always on us. Like, we're the ones that always need to bend over and do whatever to take care of the Republicans. And then people keep electing the Republicans. And I'm like, you do realize they are the problem. And so I think it's great. It's like they can't get along with each other. So what do you think? Do you think we're the problem or do you think they're the problem? Right. No, but it was interesting because we were voting on the floor. And we have like a cloakroom. So we have a room right behind the floor where you can make your phone calls and that kind of stuff. And you can watch the floor and see what's going on. So I'm in the cloakroom when I get like an alert about the fight that they had just had. And I was like, oh, Lord, I'm like the MAGA twins that fell out again. And so, they're just completely dysfunctional. We didn't vote for almost an entire week because the Freedom Caucus was all upset about the debt deal.
Yeah.
And so, they stopped everything. But the infighting, to me, should send a signal to those that continue to vote for these people that they are not capable of governing. They have the power and still don't know what to do with it.
Right,
It is time to vote for some Democrats. I promise you, what you saw last term is that Democrats got it done. Now, granted, obviously, I still feel like there was a lot more that we could have done. I wasn't there. We know that a lot of what happened or didn't happen was because of the Senate and the filibuster. But honestly, House Democrats, they got monumental legislation.
They certainly did. I'm
passed.
glad you mentioned it. Tons of legislation on all the important issues, including like gun violence, got passed out of the Democratic House, but died, as you said, in the Senate because of the filibuster rule.
Yeah.
A word on reproductive rights. It's been a year since the Dodd decision, since Roe v. Wade overturned. What are your thoughts? What are you hearing?
You know, it's so dumbfounding to me because there's certain things that we do and we don't have the benefit of knowing, right? Like, ultimately, what will the effects be or what can the effects be, right? Like, for instance, AI. Like, we're just kind of flailing around trying to figure out what are we going to do with AI? Like, because this is like a new area for us, right? When it comes down to Dobbs, though, we knew exactly what was going to happen because we know what happens in this country before Roe v. Wade. We knew how bad this was for women, and they did it anyway. And exactly what we knew would happen is happening. And so I think that we have to evaluate, what is this court really doing? And can we trust this court to do its job? I think that's why so many of us were holding our breath about preserving Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, because this court has shown itself to be very politicized versus what we historically have respected all of our courts for, especially the high courts, which is just precedence. Or even if you are overturning something, you can see the logical kind of thing. There wasn't one, right? Like, this was just, this is what we want to do, so we're doing it. And we're going to backdoor our way into it.
You say the court's politicized. I think it's pretty easy and fair to say now it's very corrupt, at least conservative justices.
Well, that's
I mean, Ketanji Brown Jackson did get a handbag or something from Oprah, but she reported it. She didn't fly in her plane, is my understanding.
No, well, and honestly, she can do that too. She just got to report it.
Right, exactly.
And I think that's what makes it look worse.
Right.
Because it's like you knew that this was in exchange for something. It's the non-reporting.
Right.
Because there's no limits. They can do whatever they want to. They just got to report it.
Is there anything that you want to report right now that you've been given, Congressman?
We report everything.
This is now the lightning round, which is exactly like the rest of the interview, but I just called a lightning round. Quick, fun, easy questions. I've been nervous and excited to interview you since we booked this. Who have you been nervous and excited to meet now that I'm sure you've met so many amazing people?
I would say I was probably pretty nervous to meet the vice president and the president. But I was definitely really nervous to meet the vice president because the vice president, as another Black female lawyer, I had followed her career since she had become the first Black woman elected prosecutor back in San Fran, or Oakland. Which side was she on? But either way.
I think Oakland, I think.
Yeah, I think it was Oakland.
Yeah.
But I had followed her career from then. And so it was just kind of like a full circle moment for me. And to tell her that story about the fact that I had followed her and she had inspired me to say, man, I can be doing something, right? Because I saw her. And so you started this interview talking about like Black girls, right? Like, or me being a Black girl from St. Louis. But it is important that Black girls see somebody that looks like them in positions like this, because it does have the ability to inspire them and allow them to see themselves in these positions. So I hope that I inspire for generations to come.
Well, I'm sure you have. I'm sure a lot of Black girls have already told you that, written you letters, said things to you. I'm sure you could share plenty of those stories.
Yeah.
Okay. Your favorite thing to make yourself, food, favorite dish to make?
I do not cook.
Nothing.
If I had to say my favorite, though, it'd probably just be spaghetti.
Okay. Well, we know you don't cook. That's a big scoop. Big scoop. You could go to any concert, living or dead.
Oh, it's got to be MJ.
Michael Jackson?
Michael Jackson. Oh, man.
Really?
Yeah, man. Oh, I was going to see him when he died. So, yeah.
Oh, wow. That got sad quickly. Favorite movie of all time?
You know what? I'm going to have to change what it was in light of what just happened. But I used to love the Titanic. Now, I haven't watched it in forever, but man, this most recent situation, I don't know. I feel like I've got to adjust.
So you have to choose one, private billionaire submersible or private billionaire rocket. Where are you going?
Neither.
You have to, Congresswoman.
No. Both of them ended up, one was an implosion and one was an explosion. I'm good.
Congresswoman, what a privilege and a pleasure to get to talk to you for so long. I am really inspired to see the work that you're doing for so many reasons, many of I stated, and I hope that we get to talk again. Please keep up the good work, and I'm so thankful, and I know my audience will be as well.
Thanks, Pete.
All right, there she goes. I definitely want to get her back on the show, so it would be a huge help if you would reach out to her on Twitter, @RepJasmine and @Jasmine4US. Tweet her at both places. She'll see it. She's very active on Twitter, and that would be huge. I'd really appreciate it, and she'll know that there's a lot of people listening, as will her team, that was super helpful with getting her book. So hopefully we can keep the conversation going with her and get more reps on. Who would you like me to interview in Congress or anywhere else? Always want to hear from you. standuppwithpete@gmail.com. I can't do the show without you, so please sign up for a paid subscription. Working my butt off. So many of you are upping your subscriptions over the last couple of weeks, noticing all the extra effort, and I really, really appreciate your extra couple bucks. It means a lot to me. A couple of people actually even asked if they could tip me on Venmo, and so sure, go ahead. You want to send me an extra $10? Fine. Pete-Dominic. That'll help out a lot. And a couple of people even sent me checks, if that's how you want to pay, because you don't trust credit cards or Patreon. It's not the preferred method, but I'm happy to take it. Thanks to those of you who have as well. You can email me, and I'll get you the address, standupwithpete@gmail.com. Write a review at Spotify and Apple if you haven't. I know I say it every day, and every podcaster does, but that matters, so go do that, please. We got to get those up, and that's all I've got for you. And let's end on a quote from a civil rights leader. This is Coretta Scott King, who said, "It doesn't matter how strong your opinions are. If you don't use your power for positive change, you are indeed part of the problem." If you listen to this program, I would say you're probably not. Thank you so much, folks. John Carroll, take us away. Talk to you tomorrow.
Black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up. Stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in. With other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? Cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. Alright, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside. And listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up, got to stand